Dragon's Rising Season 3 is a season I've expressed a lot of mixed feelings over in the past few months, and with those feelings, there's been a question that keeps popping into my mind. What now? Dragon's Rising Season 2 feels like it had a much more clear-cut direction to take for its third installment, with the Forbidden Five being freed and presumably preparing to wreak havoc across the merged lands while the ninja try and stop them, all while Raz and Arin have their own goals of finding Arin's parents and then reversing the merge. And this was definitely followed up on in part 1, even if it wasn't done perfectly. Despite all of my issues with the first half of Dragon's Rising Season 3, I think that it is still in line with what Season 2 set up, aside from Thunderfang, who was very much out of nowhere. However, come the second half of the season, I feel like the story takes a massive U-turn. While I do really like a lot of what the second half of Season 3 does, a lot of it feels really out of left field to me, and stuff like the Land of Lee, Spectral Thunderfang and Forbidden Five, and Arin splitting from Raz much sooner than I expected has left me wondering where they'll go in Season 4. Season 3 does unfortunately mess up quite a lot of what Season 2 sets up, and because of that I'm not exactly sure where they'll end up going with some of the character arcs they've seemingly set up for the next season, but that hasn't stopped me from being hopeful that certain stuff will happen. Do note that a lot of the stuff I'm about to say isn't a list of predictions, these are some broad hopes for the character arcs and general story of next season, so my goal isn't really to be right or predict what's going to happen, it's more so to express what I want them to do, not what I think they'll do. I think the easiest place to start is the Jay, Kai and Nia plotline, because if I'm being honest, I don't have a ton to say on my hopes for it. My main hope with this dynamic is that they're stranded in the land of monsters, and we'll get to see Jay continue to struggle with his morality. This would be a great way to build off of his Season 3 story about wanting to be a better person, while also giving him the opportunity to rebuild his relationship with Kai. Not only has Kai struggled with his own morality in the past, but if they really are in the land of monsters, this is a perfect way to tie what he went through monstrosity into the show, and use that as a way to introduce a new Kai and Jay dynamic. As for Jay and Nia's dynamic, I don't really have any hopes in particular, I just want them to naturally build off of what they had in Season 3 and keep making them an interesting pair to follow, though I do hope that Nia gets some stuff outside of her story with Jay. While it's some really great stuff for both of them, I feel like we haven't really gotten anything for Nia that isn't about Jay since the first half of Dragon's Rising Season 2, so I would really like to see her get some stuff outside of that too. Beyond that though, I don't have a lot to say about this potential plotline. I think that it's the one they have the lowest chances of messing up, so I'm pretty excited to see what these guys get up to next season. As for our second team composed of Sora, Thrak, Wildfire and Ryu, I do have more concerns about how they'll be handled next season, because for the most part, I think the way Season 3 handled them wasn't very good. I thought Sora's story with Arin was some really great stuff on the whole, but her dynamic with Thrak and the way they followed up on Thrak's Season 2 story just isn't very good at all in my opinion, and Thrak in particular just doesn't have anything interesting going on for him at the moment. He has absolutely nothing aside from his romance plot with Sora, which just isn't interesting to me like at all, and I think the best place they can go with it is to have Sora reject Thrak's advances. Thrak's story, while incredibly underbaked past Dragon's Rising Season 2, does have a through line about rejection, what with him having to reject a wolf mask in Season 2, being rejected by Raz because of that, and then having to reject strength as an ideology in favour of motion. I think continuing this through line with Sora rejecting him could make for some really good commentary on toxic masculinity, especially since Thrak does have some incel vibes in Season 3. I'm really hoping they end up going down this route, because it's the only way I think they can really salvage his character next season if I'm being entirely honest, because he just isn't very interesting at the moment. As for Wildfire and Ryu though, I really don't have anything to say about them other than the fact I want them to progress as characters. Both of them have been static characters since Season 2 that feel superfluous to a team at the minute. Wildfire is especially egregious because we saw Eagle die at the start of Part 2, and she's had basically nothing pertaining to what he said about being a leader, and her whole Wild Kid bit is starting to wear a bit thin for me, so I really hope her character arc starts to pick up again next season, but I do worry they're just going to leave it in the mud for the rest of the show. As for Ryu, I don't really have any thoughts towards him in the next season. I hope he does stuff, but I'm so apathetic towards him as a character that I physically can't think of anything that I hope he does in the next season. A character I do have high hopes for though is Sora. Again, her story with Arin in Season 3 was some really solid stuff, but I am extremely hopeful that Jordana will be coming back in the next season, and we'll finally get to see that plotline expanded upon after the tournament. Since this team does seem to be where the Shadow Dojo was sent at the end of Season 2, I am really hoping that Jordana has somehow made her way there, and that they'll continue her story with Sora next season. I think it's pretty plausible since she was know where the Shadow Dojo is, and I think her hiding out there after the events of Season 2 would be a great way to explain where she's been, while also giving us a great set piece for a story with Sora to unfold in, since the Shadow Dojo is very emblematic of how over her head she was with the whole Wolf Clan ordeal. The Shadow Dojo being reintroduced would also be a great way to finally give us some lore of the Wolf Clan, and potentially even explain who the warriors were in Season 2, though this is admittedly very wishful thinking on my end, because I do not think they're ever going to expand on that. I think there's a lot they could do with this plotline, and I do have hope that they can pull it off, because my hopes aren't anything they can't do, so well out of the three, this is certainly the easiest one for them to mess up. I also think it has a decent amount of potential to be really, really good, so I am hoping they're able to deliver something compelling, because it would be a massive shame if the only plotline solely comprised of new characters completely sucked. The last of the three ninja plotlines I have anything significant to say about is the Arin and Lloyd plotline, and out of the three this is definitely the one I'm anticipating the most, but much like the Sora team plotline, I think there is room for them to mess it up. While I love Arin's Season 3 story, I think a lot of the stuff past episode 16 is pretty messy and borderline not very good. And while on the whole, Lloyd's story about letting go does work, and it does do its job within the story of Season 3, it's pretty messy from start to finish. Nonetheless, I think they can do some great stuff with these plotlines, especially with the Lloyd and Arin dynamic after the events of Season 3. I think for Arin, they really need to lean into his time with Raz having an effect on him as a person. My doomsday scenario for Arin's Season 4 story is that they continue to have him struggle with his self-confidence because of his lack of elemental powers. Arin spent the better half of Season 3 with one of the strongest non-elemental fighters in the merged lands, and killed Thunderfang twice without any elemental powers whatsoever. My hope is that his dynamic with Lloyd completely shifts after his time with Raz, potentially not having the same respect or idolization for him after what went down between them in Seasons 2 and 3. For Lloyd, I'm hoping that they continue his Season 3 story about letting go, and I hope it takes the shape of him finally being disillusioned with Wu and his teachings. No more denial, no more blind defenses. I want to see Lloyd finally have the inner conflicts they've been setting up from the start, and have him finally take up the mantle of Master without the mentality of what would Wu do. This would bounce really nicely off of Arin, who's already disillusioned with Wu as a master, and I think it would push Lloyd's character to some really interesting places. I hope this leads to him being a better teacher to Arin as well. We saw him start to make progress on this by finding his parents, but I do hope they go deeper into him letting go of his old ways with Arin, especially with his insistence on Arin's potential to be the best ninja. I think it would be a really natural progression of his story in Dragon's Rising, so I'm really hoping they end up going down this route with him. I am really excited to see where they take these two regardless though, because there's a lot you can do with them after the events of Season 3, so I am really hoping they don't mess them up next season. I don't just have things to say about the main ninja plotlines though, because I also have some things I want to say on Raz and his story. With him being at the City of Temples after stranding the ninja across the merged lands, I am really hoping that he's going to get Cinder out of the Temple City dungeons. Cinder was pretty underdeveloped in Dragon's Rising Season 2, so I'm really hoping that if they bring him back, we'll finally get to know more about him. A flashback where he meets Raz, for example, and we learn about his motivations would do a lot for me, and it would go a long way to develop his character. As for Raz himself, I just want him to feel like he's present within the story and doing things. Pretty much everything we get from Raz in Dragon's Rising Season 3 was awesome, but once he and Arin split, his screen time diminishes significantly, and while what we get is really auriful and cool, I do hope that his content moving forward isn't just him appearing, saying something cool, we cut to something else, and the next time we see him he's completed another step of his master's plan off screen. One of the best things about Season 3 is how present Raz is, and how we get to see the moves he and Arin make to salvage his master's plan after Noct fucks them over. So I'm really hoping he continues to be present within the story and have interesting stuff to do to further flesh him and the dynamic with his master out. On the topic of Raz's master, I think next season should be when we finally get an answer on who they are. Assuming we are getting 5 seasons of Dragon's Rising, I think it makes sense for us to go into the final season finally knowing who this mysterious master is, so I think the latter half of Season 4 would be the perfect time to do just that. If they don't reveal him in the next 20 or so episodes, I worry we won't have enough time with the final season to properly flesh them and their motivations out before they're inevitably stopped by the ninja. Next season would be a perfect time to give us their identity and start laying the groundwork for them as our new, upcoming main threat for the series. Along with answering who Raz's master is, I hope we start to get answers on other mysteries that Dragon's Rising has set up. I am pretty confident we'll start to get more answers next season, because the ninja being scattered in monasteries across the merged lands is the perfect opportunity to expand upon the monastery mystery, the pod mystery, and the Wu ghost mystery. I think another mystery they should start to give us answers on is the Source Dragon of Balance mystery on that whole plotline. With half of the council gone, I'm hoping we'll get some cool stuff about the Source Dragons next season, and maybe start to learn about how Balance died and who killed them, since they seem to be hinting at the fact that it was some sort of big battle, and since they dug up Balance's long decayed body, I don't think their death was any recent event either. While on the topic of the Source Dragons, I'm really hoping that every elemental power being on the fritz isn't used for any more powerless arcs. Having the balance of elemental powers be askew for everyone is a really interesting concept, especially if we are to believe that the powers of the Source Dragons still on the council are going to be on overdrive, but it would suck if this concept was used for more powerless arc slop, and it would be especially bad if they use it to forward the dynamic between Lloyd and Arin, using it as yet another way to drill in the message that powers don't make a hero. The final thing that I'm hoping for next season is a good thematic dichotomy, akin to what we got in Dragons Rising Season 2. I'm sure you're all sick to death of hearing me talk about this at this point, but Season 3's really weak focus versus chaos dichotomy really let me down, and so for the next season, I'm hoping they're able to do something interesting with the season's themes. We know the concept of life is going to have its part to play in the next season, so I'm hoping they oppose it with something like balance, which could be tied to the fact that the Source Dragon of Balance has been rotting away in the desert for however long it's been since they died, and possibly make the link between the mortal world offsetting the balance, with the whole Thunderfangle deal putting Raz in a much better position than he was a season ago. Opposing life and balance would also allow for some really interesting stuff for Lloyd and Ryu. It could give Ryu any sort of relevance to the show, but I think for Lloyd you could tie it back to a story of letting go and the idea of balance, which itself is something Wu strongly believed in. I don't have super high hopes that they'll follow through with this life versus balance dichotomy next season, since they really didn't do anything with focus versus chaos last season, but I really hope that I'm proven wrong, because I would love for them to do something interesting with life and balance on the same level as they did for strength and motion in Season 2. I know I've expressed a lot of worry towards how they handle some of the stuff they've set up for next season, but believe me when I say I am incredibly excited to see what they come out with for next year. Dragons Rising, while obviously not perfect, has had a really consistently good story so far, and I have a lot of hope that it'll be good for next season as well, even if some of the hopes I expressed in this video don't end up coming to fruition. With that being said though, I believe that's pretty much everything I have to say about my hopes for next year's Dragons Rising story. I want to thank you, the person watching this right now, for watching this video. It means a ton and I really appreciate it. If you did enjoy and want to see me lose my mind when Dragons Rising Season 4 inevitably does none of this stuff, consider subscribing. It would do a ton to support me and the channel, and if you did, I would really appreciate it. Alternatively, if you want a space to talk to other Ninjago fans, consider joining my Discord server, the Digiverse. There's a link on screen now and in the description of this video, so it's there if you want to join. Again, massive thank you to everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now. Wait, I didn't get a brutality measured in, no!
You feel time, look at yourself. Inside your heart you will find a special place.